we were there from like 11 a.m. to 5, like setting up, getting everything totally perfect. At 5 o'clock, like the crowd comes in for our little set. KT comes in and sits down and she strums her guitar. And like the audio feed that we're getting is just awful. Like it's just like humming and we can barely hear her. And it's like, oh yeah, exactly. Like we have an audience, we have the performer, like, oh my gosh.
Welcome to The Practical Filmmaker, an educational podcast brought to you by the Filmmaker Institute and Sunscreen Film Festival, where industry professionals talk nuts and bolts and the steps they took to find their success today. In this episode, we chat the balance between commercial work and passion projects with Alysse Campbell of Myriad. Find the full transcripts and more at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. I'm your host, Tanya Musgrave, and today we have Alysse Campbell, manager of original content of Myriad, a Raleigh-based video agency that focuses on making a difference through technology and socially impactful films that inspire action. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
We're starting to branch off into different types of filmmaking. Obviously, narrative is a corner of the industry, but there's so much more around it. And, filmmakers that make their living and live and breathe film, but aren't necessarily in the narrative model. But you have a little bit of both. What has your journey been till now?
I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and I was definitely like a theater kid. Like I loved being on stage, and I always thought that's where my life was going to go. But I remember this moment in middle school, like touring the auditorium and seeing the big spotlights at the very like top of the auditorium and getting to like stand behind them and like move them back and forth. And I was like, this is where it's at. Like, this is the cool stuff. Like, I want to be behind the scenes. Yeah. And then once I was in college, that was the first time I really took a camera and just started shooting things and made a lot of like music videos with my friends, like outside of our dorms and things like that. I also worked as an engineer at our media center. So I was really, really behind the scenes of like our game shows and our news division, which was great. Just so much experience there. After college, it was 2008. So it was kind of a recession and tough to get a job. So I did the standard coffee shop life. You do what you got to do.
Yep.
Then I got a job at a fondue restaurant where I was literally like melting cheese, like for people. But all the while I was doing those things, I was shooting video and I was trying to meet people and I was doing jobs for free or for like $50, doing passion projects and just trying to meet people, trying to stay active. And honestly, it was through one of those random shoots. Like 4 months later, I got a call from one of the women I worked with and she said, "Hey, I'm about to leave my job. I just told them to hire you and they want you to come in tomorrow for an interview." And I was like, okay, like no more cheese for me. Like, so I was kind of the one woman band video department at a software company and was like shooting, editing, producing there. From there, I went to a post house and was working in reality TV, which was, man, it was the best like learning I could have ever gotten. Like I was thrown to the wolves.
Yeah. Reality editing, like post for reality is no joke.
Yes, absolutely. And this was stuff that was airing on like major networks, airing weekly. And it became pretty clear that like, it wasn't a good fit. I felt like I was telling the wrong stories. I mean, I was working my butt off like 6 a.m. to 9, 10, midnight, like each day. And it's hard to do that when you don't care about the story that you're telling.
Yeah.
It can be easy to grind when you are passionate and that's all you want to tell, but it wasn't the right place for me. Then I had been friends with some of the guys from Myriad for a while and eventually a producer role opened. So applied and went there.
Wow. First of all, let's differentiate. Is it an advertising agency or a video agency that works in conjunction with an ad agency?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are a video agency. So it's kind of this hybrid space. We don't consider ourselves a traditional advertising agency. We do strategy. We do creative strategy with our clients to understand what they need, who they're trying to reach, and what's the message. And then we take that strategy and turn it into video concepts, video campaign, and help our clients release those. Okay. But I think with the advertising agencies, sometimes we work with them to execute a video. When we work with them, we play the role of production company, but we have a lot of creative people and we like that strategy and that creative development. When we can, we work directly with clients to do that discovery and strategy that gets us to the end goal.
There's quite a range when it comes to this kind of thing, like clientele, you could have from one side, okay, yeah, we will create this video for you and take pictures for you for like $500. And then, those are like kind of like the locally based, like the startups. And they're like, okay, yeah, you get this one kid with their camera and they can like make something for you, right? And then you have other agencies where, well, like other video gigs that will take you up to like 50K, and that's like low budget, and then there are the other ones that are just like, actually, we have all of these options, but the agency wants us to shoot all of them so that the client can decide which one. So how about like 150K for this 30-second, 150K for this option, and then this option. So where does Myriad kind of live with that, like on that scale, on that spectrum?
Yeah, well, Myriad has been around for almost 30 years. So I'd say the days of one person going out and getting $500, like those, we're past those days.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Our budgets typically range between like 20,000 at a low end to a couple $100,000 for a larger project. And that just depends on the client. We do like pro bono work with local charities or local organizations that we believe in. Yeah. So those don't have any budget and we're doing it, just out of our hearts because we want to.
Yeah.
And that being said, then some of the more non-client stuff, so the Myriad originals, those are another range. And those are much more, when we're doing them fully in-house, those are much more on the low end. Like we're doing those from, a few $100s to 10, 15,000 for the full film. But then we're developing concepts and pitching them that we would hope to get, 200,000 for. We know that we can create films that live up to that. So we're trying.
Yeah. You had mentioned originals, and on your website, myriad.video, there was a whole section titled originals under categories such as like racial justice, LGBTQ+, and also Raleigh. I lived in North Carolina for a good 10 years. So
nice.
my brother's actually based near Raleigh. And I was very surprised to learn that Raleigh is actually one of the most ethnically diverse cities in America. And it's really awesome to see companies that are working more on the local community level.
It's the South, so people are open to conversations and to meeting. It feels very different from like a New York or an LA where, nobody feels like too good for anyone here. I think that, if you have something to say or something interesting to talk about, like people are going to answer your phone call.
When you were talking about taking those projects and pitching them, can you give me an example?
Myriad originals, our kind of mantra or thing to think about is we create, we promote and like distribute, and we pitch.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the pitch aspect. Myriad, about 15 years ago, created a full-length documentary with a group called Sustainable Harvest. Sustainable Harvest is a group that empowers low-income farmers to implement, alternative solutions to agriculture. They do a lot of work in Latin America, and that's where the focus of our film was. So we're trying to do something new with them, and we've been collaborating along the lines of something that's currently called Heartland, but is definitely just a working title. But it's a 5-episode series that really tells the story of this family in Latin America and what's going on with their farm. And, with climate change, so much is changing down there, and it's completely revolutionizing like what they're farming and their lifestyle and their future. So that is like one project that we have in development. So we had this idea, and then we brought in a kind of writer idea person to help us really like brainstorm it out and really develop the idea into a greater concept. We have a few different like pitch decks. One is very short, but one is more like a series Bible, and it explains everything from the series to the specific episodes and like how they're being told and who the characters are, even like the tone and like the imagery we include in that deck to give a sense of like what this would look like and feel like. So now that we have that deck, now we take that to people in our network and just kind of start sharing the idea, break down that log line or synopsis and see who like feeds back. Our hope is that, someone will be intrigued and want to have another conversation, and that will just lead further down the road. But another thing we do with these types of projects is we enter them in like labs or grant programs. And basically they're just places where you can if you're accepted, you can either, get a little bit of money, or you can get some mentorship, or even like just get meetings with different industry people. We had 2 previous series were accepted into the Gotham or the IFP's, one of their programs, and they're based in New York. They're all about filmmaking and helping empower like filmmakers. Oh, okay. So that was huge. Like we went to their program. We were mentored by a vice president from Sony Pictures. Wow. Yeah, there were people from different production companies that were there talking to us. And then ultimately we were pitching the show to Amazon Studios. A24 was there. Wow. Like all these like big names. None of them actually like took our series, but I have them as connections now. And and I'm still in touch with a handful of those people. So the sustainable harvest piece, like I will go to at least like 5 of those people that I pitched to and share it with them, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Wow. That is incredible. From a business perspective, are those financial passion projects, or have you worked them in a way where you're not necessarily taking a hit by being able to create those films?
Yeah. So we've been doing these types of projects the whole 30 years that Myriad's been around, and they've always been self-funded. And that's why the budgets have always been on the lower side. Yeah. But they're important to our business from a cultural and just a happiness perspective from our employees. Mm-hmm. They are a chance for us to like practice and gain new skills, which is great. But we do use them in sales meetings and to attract new clients because, people that are coming to us often want like a tech video, but what attracts them is this like flashy, interesting, like original content. And that makes them really like feel something. That's what they like fall in love with. And then when they have a project, they're like, oh, okay, let's go to them. Like, I like them. So that's how we've used it in the past. Our vision moving forward is that we need to get these things funded. We need to find partners that help us distribute these pieces. We don't expect that every original that we do will get $100,000 in funding, but our hope is that we can find partners that really lift up the video and can help get it seen or just help get it out there in a way that it's not just, dying on YouTube alone.
So is this the dream then, this blend of advertising? Are you guys wanting to go fully in one direction or the other? Or is this the pretty solid dream?
Yeah. I think Myriad will always have like both sides of the coin. It's a great fit of having that client side and having our passion side. I think that's where it's going to land. Yeah. And ultimately, like the goal is really to blend them, to have like an entertainment series in partnership with one of our like clients. Like that would be the dream, that we're like branded content is something that I'm always interested in because it's a way that the brands can be happy, like they're getting really creative stuff, and our teams can be happy because they're getting to work on something that's a little more creative. That's where my mind always lies. Another option for funding could be like crowdsourcing and doing like a Seed and Spark campaign. That's definitely a path that we could see for this SHI or, some of the other ideas that we have. I feel like if you have an idea, it doesn't have to be like supported. You don't have to sell it out to a brand. You can find a way. It's just hard, but like there are grants available, crowdfunding. There are ways to do it. But I think for an organization like Myriad that has, we have about 15 full-time employees. We work with freelancers all the time. Nice. I think we're going to play both sides of the coin.
Yeah. There are a lot of people that they're essentially sole proprietors and freelancers as soon as they graduate, and they're not necessarily aware of the options that they have. It's either you go with a dream in your pocket to LA, or, you go into what lots of people would say the soul sucking side of filmmaking, of, just like creating stuff that pays well, but, doesn't feed you creatively, which is so important for artists. But one of the main focuses of this podcast is to bring attention to opportunities that exist out there where there are balances.
There are different paths for sure. Like the freelancer path is something that I feel like has exploded over the last few years. Something shifted, and freelancers, that's now the industry out here, at least in Raleigh and in North Carolina. But there are so many, like you said, kind of the more like corporate side or the brand side where you could get a kind of entry-level marketing job out of college and you can start getting experience. This may be hard to hear, but I think it's like very unrealistic for people to like graduate and just make that like full-length narrative film right out of the gate. It's like it's just gonna, you gotta like melt some cheese and like you gotta like be a barista for a little while. Like you gotta like play, you gotta like pay your dues a little bit. And that's good. I mean, like being in the reality TV, like even though that wasn't a good fit, like man, that is where I learned like how good I needed to be. Like my boss, like the third week that I was there, my boss was like, I ran 6 shows. They all had like 10 plus episodes each. And my boss would just be like, okay, this series, episode 2, where is that? And how about episode 7? Is that in post yet? Wow. Okay, what about this show, episode 3? And it was like, I was like, I have to, okay, let me like look at all my notes and everything. But a couple months later, it was like, I know this stuff. Like, I know that I need to know this stuff. And, that was huge. So every experience is going to teach you something. You're going to meet people and, you never know who is just going to become a collaborator, instead of just a coworker,
Just like meeting people. I feel like that was a huge thing that I realized. And I did the whole coffee shop job, all that fun stuff as well. And honestly, when people say don't be in a rush, it's
it's hard to hear.
But I get it, because it's not for the sake of making coffee or melting cheese. It's giving yourself a chance to develop the skills that you need. I remember somebody saying like, if you want big shoes, you have to grow into them or you're going to trip.
Oh, I like that.
If you wear shoes that are too big for you, like you're going to fall. So,
Yeah. And I actually have like a great example of this. When I was doing the coffee shop lifestyle, I started like a public access TV show with 3 other people called Sound Situations. And it was like a live music thing where we interviewed the bands and mixed like performance footage with like their interview, and it aired on public access, and it was awesome. And it was so fun. No budget, no payments, all volunteer. And now, like 15 years later, at Myriad, I started with a coworker of mine, Window Music, which is a live music series that features musicians like performing songs and speaking their minds. And I always think back to Sound Situations because this is just the like leveled up version.
Yeah.
This is like the version where I'm not the DP. Like we have real legit like directors working on this stuff. But it just, like you're saying, it's like slow and steady, and like these ideas that you have like don't go away, and you can always be like working on your passion projects like slow and steady, and you never know like where they're gonna come back.
I would love to learn a little bit more about your apprenticeship program.
We started our apprenticeship program to really give a leg up to someone who needed it. Like this field is more accessible than ever now. People can film movies on their iPhones. You can like edit on free software, like post stuff online for free, but you really like, you have to learn somewhere. So this program is for someone who like didn't go to film school, someone who's talented, but just needed a chance to like meet people and get on. As we've talked about, film is like all about experience and making connections. And recently, a woman named Avi was our apprentice, and she had a handful of shorts that she shot like in high school. And she was really talented with like her point and shoot camera. That was kind of where she was at. She wanted to make movies and she needed the experience. So we brought her on, and her first week we were on set in like a cold, dingy gas station, like in the middle of nowhere. And it was kind of like, okay, Avi, if you can get through this and you enjoyed yourself, like you're going to be just fine. Like this is the right place for you.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I imagine that we'll be opening up again later this year or early next year for applicants. So if you follow any of our social on like Myriad video, we'll absolutely post about it and make sure that people know that applications are open.
Amazing. People who have gig job who have families and stuff like that. I just kind of wanted to know your perspective in like having this particular job, how that affords certain things or how it actually could be better.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Like having a family is tough if you have a job like in any industry. It doesn't have to be film. But yeah, I mean, with film, you're out on set, you're out on location for long periods of time or long hours. Like it can definitely be hard. So I think like that is an opportunity, to try to find a company that you can work on telling their stories. I think it's one of those things though, that like, if you have kids, like you don't want them to be your whole life. Like they may be the most important thing in your life, but like you still need to have your own creative outlet, or, there still is something for you. So I think for someone who's creative and a filmmaker, like there's always going to be this desire to create. And so it's just going to be about like finding that and just honestly, like being realistic about what's going to work, or just finding the right partner.
Yeah.
Because you may find that partner that's like, well, my husband also does video production, and we met in a film class, and like
someone who gets it.
Yeah, exactly. He gets it, which is great. And so you may find that person that's okay with you, leaving for a month to go shoot, or can cover it, or, has their own excuse to do the same thing or something like that. So, I think just knowing that it is tough, but kids they're not going to end everything.
That's a good hopeful statement there.
Yeah, hopefully you can still try to be your own person a little bit,
Yeah. So one of the things that I always love to ask is about tools of the trade, and I know that as a producer, tools of the trade is not necessarily the same as like a gaffer or something like that.
Yeah.
But I was curious about particular resources or even software or, connections that is an old reliable, a good reliable resource.
Okay. I kind of got two things. One is this website called filmfreeway.com.
Okay.
And it is basically a one-stop shop for submitting your work to film festivals. Like all of the major film festivals use this platform. You basically create your profile for your film or your work, whatever. You can add the whole film, trailer, stills, info, credits, like all that stuff. And then when you want to submit to Tribeca or to Sundance or your local film festival, they are likely on there, and it's just so easy to submit, and it's kind of just a hub. So
okay.
Yeah, highly recommend that.
For some reason, I remembered Without a Box, and that was like from like a dozen years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
But for some reason, I don't think it's around anymore. I don't know if I maybe I'm remembering.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't come across that in a while. But I'm on Film Freeway often, and I discover new festivals. And with film festivals, they can seem intimidating because they are, but it's also like people feel like, I want to get into Tribeca. I want to get into like these major hot dogs. But there are thousands of film festivals across the country. And these smaller ones can be a really special place for a younger or whatever, like filmmaker. And these smaller ones too are places where you can try to like do something at the festival. Like a lot of festivals have like panels or little events or just little like installations that you could try to work with the organizers to share your film or just get involved to meet other filmmakers. So Film Freeway.
Nice. And your other?
My other, this is just gonna be silly, but like literally just a piece of paper, like with a giant chart. I pulled out, we had like the giant like scrim pieces of paper, in all different colors. And I pulled out like a huge, like 6-foot long one. And I just made a big chart on it. And I put all of our like films that are in development, in production, and then just like the process along the top. And I just put X's through the boxes. And it's like, we're in film, we're visual people.
Yes.
So I needed like a visual way to track where everything is.
Tangible. I cannot tell you how much I relate to this. It's the same with calendars, like having a calendar. I got made fun of so much because I had this paper calendar that was all on my closet doors that like went through the next 6 months or so. And, I would just be like, I got to check that. Got to check that calendar. Like, oh, you got to run home and check your closet doors. It was so dumb, right? Just like, I understand. I get it. Having that visual is really great. It's on your phone, but come on, like,
Yeah, it's for me, and it's for me to just make sure I'm on track. I had one more that popped into my head. Yeah. It's called Studio Binder.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes, that is like the best thing for our producers. I don't use it much, but our producers use it, and it's just a full call sheet, everything like hub. And so whenever I get that little text of like, your call time is 7 a.m., I know that everything I need is in there, and it's just a really great organizational hub.
Yes, that's amazing. Okay, so for your favorite new gadgets, what revolutionizes how you work?
We just purchased a live switcher, which has really like revolutionized how we do production. It's completely eliminated like our post-production, or eliminated like 90% of it, because we have a director that's sitting at the live switcher that's calling the shots and switching. And so at the end of that, we have this like live file. And I mean, these are musician sets, so they're like 20 minutes long. It's so tedious to like edit those things. It's really hard. Like the first one that we did, the first two that we did were not live switched, and post just took like months. It was just like going on and on because it's just so tedious. So that live switcher purchase has been a total game changer for us.
Which one did you get?
Yeah, so the switcher that we got is the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. They're made by Blackmagic Designs. And then we use these great headsets that were ear tech, which all just really work together well.
Another favorite of mine is to know of a story when something went wrong and what you did to fix it or grow from it.
Yeah, just on our window music shoot just a couple weeks ago, we shot KT Tunsdale, like a country singer, at one of the local music venues. And, we were there from like 11 a.m. to 5, like setting up, getting everything totally perfect. At 5 o'clock, like the crowd comes in for our little set. KT comes in and sits down and she strums her guitar. And like the audio feed that we're getting is just awful. Like it's just like humming and we can barely hear her. And it's like, oh yeah, exactly. Like we have an audience, we have the performer, like, oh my gosh. And so we were working with her music person and was getting like a feed from their board to our board. So we were trying all these like last minute things. And ultimately it ended up being like on his board, he just turned up the sending volume and that eliminated the buzz. But like we were thinking like this is like a cable that went bad, or there's like do we have to like rewire this stuff? And it was almost like well, if we don't have audio, this is about a music show, like how are we gonna what are we gonna do here? So it was scary because it was like if that didn't work, like KT needed to go, like she had a performance to give. So it would have just been all for naught, and it would have been really, really disappointing that we probably still would have filmed it and hoped maybe, one of the cameras was just getting like NAT audio that was better. But yeah, that was one that was scary, but just ended up magically working. Like usually on set, something comes to just work and you figure something out. Things can't stay wrong when you're on set. Like you have to move forward. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I would love to follow your work. How do people find you or follow what Myriad is doing? This is your shameless plug up.
Yeah, we are at Myriad Video on all the social platforms. We love a good Instagram. We are also myriad.video is our website, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and from there you can see our Myriad originals. You can see our client work. But there's lots of good stories and inspiration on there.
Nice. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This is really great.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. It was fun and always love talking video.
If you enjoyed this interview, follow us right here and on Instagram, ask us questions, and check out more episodes at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on The Practical Filmmaker.